man's boot, soaked in old blood, came out of the satchel in Emily's trembling hands. Her scream tore through the barn, primal and uncontainable, as she flung the boot away. It landed in the straw, a single gruesome proof that this morning was no ordinary one. Less than an hour before, Polvora had limped out of the sunrise, dragging a heavy leather bag.
Polvora, but Charles swore he'd sold him. Why is he here, dragging that thing?
She ran, her coffee cup forgotten in the dirt. Inside the barn, the old gelding stood lathered and trembling, and from his mouth the satchel dropped at her feet. She opened it and found a revolver, its grip still carrying the scent of oil and old fear. Beneath it, a document, pages brittle and stained in brown.
Sheriff Barnes, it's Emily Doyle. I need you at the ranch. Don't call Charles. Just come.
3 days earlier, Charles Doyle pulled his horse trailer up the dusty switchbacks of Coyote Canyon at dusk.
22 years old, and not worth the hay you eat. The wolves can have you.
He yanked the rope tight, knotted it to a juniper trunk, and gave the horse a mock pat on the neck.
Consider it a retirement package, old friend.
He laughed, a dry bark that bounced off the canyon walls, then walked back to his truck without a backward glance. Behind him, Polvora's whinny followed, a sound of confusion and a plea that Charles had stopped hearing years ago. The truck rumbled to life, and within minutes the canyon road was empty, the dust settling over the junipers. As the last light bled out of the sky, Polvora strained against the rope, and the first wolf tracks dotted the dust beside his hooves. He'd been left to die, an accounting decision wrapped in a sheepskin coat and crowned with a black hat. And so the old horse stood, trembling, as the canyon went black and the howling began. Polvora pulled until the rope burned into his neck, old muscles remembering terror. He chewed the coarse hemp, grinding through strand by strand. The rope snapped. He bolted into the canyon, a gray ghost in darkness, wolf eyes on the ridge. All night he moved through rock and juniper, flinching at howls. At first light, he was still walking, hooves raw, tongue dry. Along a dry creek bed, half buried, the shape of a leather satchel broke the dirt. He sniffed it, old, metallic, wrong, then got his teeth around the strap. The satchel was caked in dust and dark stains, heavy with something that smelled of violence. But instinct overrode fear. He turned toward the ranch, dragging it behind. He set off over stones, head low, the satchel scraping a path toward home. Emily was on the porch, coffee growing cold, when a shape limped out of the dawn glare. It was Polvora, the horse her husband swore he'd sold, dragging a leather bag up the drive. She ran, coffee mug shattering on the flagstones, and didn't look back. Inside the barn, Polvora stood heaving, and the satchel dropped from his mouth onto the straw.
Easy, boy. Easy now.
She knelt and opened the flap. Her fingers touched something cold and curved, a boot, leather split, stiff with dried blood.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
She pulled out a revolver next, its grip smooth and cold in her trembling hand. Beneath it, a document, pages folded tight, its notarized seal grim and official. Her hand closed around the phone. In seconds, she would tell the sheriff everything she knew, and more than she wanted to believe. 20 minutes later, Sheriff Barnes's patrol car rolled through the ranch gate, dust hanging in the still air.
Emily, your voice on the phone. I came alone. Where's Charles?
I don't know. I haven't seen him since yesterday. Just look.
Barnes knelt by the satchel and lifted the boot. His face went hard the moment he saw the initials stamped inside the leather, WC.
William Crane. 6 months missing, and now his boot shows up in my county.
He unfolded the document, read the opening line, and the color left his face. He read aloud, quietly. I, William Crane, being of sound mind, do hereby accuse Charles Doyle of fraud and threats to my life.
Dispatch. This is Barnes at the Doyle Ranch. I need a crime scene unit, and every deputy available. Emily, don't touch anything else. This is now a homicide investigation.
Outside, the canyon wind picked up, but inside the barn, the air was thick with a 6-month-old secret that would soon have nowhere left to hide. The pickup idled for a long, ugly moment. Charles saw the patrol car, killed the engine, and walked toward the barn with his fists already balled.
What the hell is this, Barnes? You can't search my property without me.
He spotted the satchel on the straw and lunged, but Barnes was faster, forearm to chest, halting him.
Back off, Doyle. You'll answer my questions before you touch anything.
William's boot was in it, Charles, and his sworn statement that you were going to kill him.
You're believing a piece of paper a horse dragged in. This is a plant. You're making a mistake, Barnes.
Then let's clear it up at the station. I've got a missing man and a document with your name on it.
Charles's jaw worked, but no denial came. The sweat on his temple betrayed him.
I was married to a killer.
Barnes walked Charles to the patrol car. No cuffs yet, but the door closed on a man whose power was already draining away. At the county sheriff's office, Barnes closed the interview room door with a soft click and placed the evidence on the metal table.
This is a joke. I sold Pulvora 2 weeks ago. Whatever he dragged up was planted, and you're buying it.
Then explain the notarized signature, Doyle. Explain why William Crane wrote that you threatened to kill him.
A dead man's forgery. No body, no crime. You've got nothing but a horse's instinct and my wife's panic.
Barnes didn't answer. He had already issued the order, a full grid search of the canyon where Pulvora had been tied and the horse had found the satchel. At first light, a team of deputies and a bloodhound moved into Coyote Canyon, picking up the horse's trail from 3 days before. They hit the dry creek bed fast. The dog circled a patch of ground where the dirt was loose and dark, not shaped by floodwater, and the handler's face tightened.
If you find turned soil, treat it like a grave. We need to know if William Crane is down there, and we need it fast.
Shovels broke the morning silence, and the sun climbed over a canyon that had been keeping its secret for more than half a year. Inside the station, Charles stared at the boot on the table, but his mind raced toward the canyon, counting the minutes. The shovel tip stopped against something that gave with a dry crack, and the deputy froze. 2 feet down, the dirt turned to bone. A human skull lay exposed, a neat hole drilled through the temple. The radio call was terse. "Sheriff, we have remains. Gunshot wound to the head." "It's him." In the station corridor, Sheriff Barnes pressed the receiver to his ear and felt the case lock into place. The boot, the revolver, the notarized accusation. Now a body with a bullet hole in its skull.
20 years of ranching, and he just buried his partner like bad feed. Not smart enough to dig a real grave.
The remains were lifted before noon, and the revolver from the satchel was already on its way to ballistics. Coyote Canyon had given up its dead, and the man who thought he'd gotten away with murder was still in the interview room, denying everything. Miles away, Emily stared at the empty chair where her husband used to eat breakfast, and the silence told her everything she needed to know. She didn't need a lab report to confirm it. The horse had brought the proof home, and her husband's lies had nowhere left to hide. The ballistics report landed on Barnes's desk before sundown. The bullet from the skull and the revolver from the satchel were a definitive match.
Same rifling, same caliber, same gun that William's own words put in Charles's hand.
A second call authenticated the document. William Crane's signature, notarized stamp, dated 5 days before he vanished. Barnes walked to the interview room and opened the door without knocking. Charles was still slouched in the chair, arms crossed.
Charles Doyle, you're under arrest for the first-degree murder of William Crane. Stand up.
The sneer fell off Charles's face. For the first time, he looked like a man who'd just run out of lies. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists, and Barnes recited the rights as cameras flashed down the hall. The booking photo caught him mid-blink, sheepskin coat gone, the black hat left on a table with his belt and boots. They led him past the evidence board, the skull photo, the revolver, the document, and Charles wouldn't look at any of it. The cell door closed, and Charles Doyle, millionaire, rancher, cold-eyed killer, was finally where he belonged, waiting for a trial that everyone already knew he'd lose. At the bail, hearing the judge flattened the defense with 4 words, "Bail is denied, Mr. Doyle."
She won't testify. Emily doesn't have the spine.
The bailiff moved to cuff him again, and as Charles passed the gallery, he locked eyes with Emily and mouthed a single word: "Don't."
He still thinks I'm the same woman who poured his coffee and looked away.
Emily, I need to know. Will you take the stand? The jury will need to hear it from you.
I'm scared, Barnes. He'll twist everything. He'll make me look like a bitter wife who's lying.
She unfolded the letter again. William's careful handwriting, the notary seal, the fear between the lines. "He will kill me and bury me where no one looks."
I'll testify. Not as his wife, as William's voice. I owe him that.
She slid the document across the desk, her hand steady now, and the prosecution's case became bulletproof. The courtroom was packed by 9 o'clock, the air thick with the kind of silence that follows a headline. The prosecutor held up the boot, then the revolver, and let the jury see the silent weight of each piece. The defense lawyer rose and called it a fable, a wandering horse, a planted satchel, a wife with a grudge.
Let them spin theories. Without a witness, they have nothing.
He still doesn't know. I'm not afraid of him anymore.
The prosecutor turned toward the gallery and called the name that made the jury lean forward: Emily Doyle. She walked past defense counsel, past her husband's stare, and placed her left hand on the Bible.
William, I'm speaking now.
The prosecutor's first question hung in the air, and every person in that room knew the trial had just turned. Emily Doyle was no longer a suspect's wife. She was the prosecution's sharpest instrument.
I was on the porch. Polvora came up the drive dragging a satchel that looked like it had been buried for months. Charles swore he'd sold him, but there he was, trembling, with a blood-stained bag in his mouth. Inside was a man's boot, a revolver, and a signed paper. I knew wasn't just trash. When Charles got home, he tried to snatch the satchel. He wasn't shocked. He was angry. The defense asked if I was a bitter wife looking for a way out. I said no, but that doesn't make evidence appear. They tried to make me look like a liar, but that paper wasn't mine. It was William's. He knew he was going to die. He wrote it down because no one else would listen.
The prosecutor lifted the notarized letter and read aloud: "I, William Crane, accuse Charles Doyle of fraud and threats to my life." By the time he stopped reading, 3 jurors were staring at Charles Doyle. The prosecution rested, and the weight of the document hung in the air like a verdict already decided. Charles Doyle took the stand in a borrowed suit, swore on the same Bible his wife had held, and began to spin.
William Crane embezzled $50,000 and ran. That letter is a forgery. I never threatened anyone. He probably planted that satchel himself before he disappeared. The horse just dug it up.
On cross, the prosecutor asked why William's passport had never been used, his bank untouched, and not a single soul had seen him leave town.
People who steal don't leave a trail. He was clever. Maybe he got help. I don't know.
Then the prosecutor held up the revolver. Charles's own, with his initials filed off, but the serial still traceable, and asked how it ended up in the satchel.
It was stolen from my truck weeks before. I reported it, didn't I?
But no report existed. And when pressed for a date, Charles couldn't produce one. He just stared at his own hands, jaw tight. The jury watched a man who had an answer for everything run out of road, and their faces told a story he couldn't control. The defense rested, but the only thing Charles Doyle had proven was that a liar under oath sounds exactly like a guilty man buying time. The prosecutor lifted the skull photograph and held it before the jury like the final word in a long, dark argument. He traced the chain, satchel, boot, revolver, bullet, and let the silence between each piece do its work. Charles Doyle left a horse to die, and the horse brought us the truth. That is not coincidence, it is consequence. The defense rose and called the case a fable, a wandering horse, a planted bag, a wife who'd stopped loving her husband. He asked for reasonable doubt, pointed to the missing witnesses, the circumstantial links, but his voice never quite reached the back row. The judge gave the jury their instructions, and 12 faces disappeared behind the deliberation room door. Charles sat rigid, his prayer hands white-knuckled, while Emily walked out to the corridor alone. She sat on a hard bench, the notarized page still in her hands, its edges softened by a week of her own touch.
I've said everything I know. The rest belongs to you now, William.
The hallway clock ticked like a second pulse, and every set of footsteps made her look up. After 4 hours, the deliberation room door opened, and the jurors filed back to their seats, faces set like stone. The foreman stood, a sheet of paper in his hand that could end a man's life. We, the jury, find the defendant, Charles Doyle, guilty of murder in the first degree. Charles's face went slack, the color draining like water from a broken trough. Emily's hand flew to her mouth, a sob catching in her throat.
Thank you, William.
The judge banged the gavel for silence, but the courtroom had already erupted. The jury was discharged, and sentencing was set for the following week. Charles was handcuffed again and led past Emily without a word, and for the first time in 6 months, Emily breathed as if the weight of the canyon had finally been lifted. In the same courtroom, a week later, Charles Doyle stood before the judge to hear his punishment. The judge's voice carried no emotion. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. The gavel dropped, and the sound sealed a 6-month-old nightmare into the record. Charles was handcuffed and led toward the side door. His head hung low. Emily stood and walked toward the exit, her steps steady. Outside, a swarm of reporters pressed forward, but she passed them in silence.
I am free now.
She tilted her face to the sun and let the warmth soak into her skin. The law had done its part, and the canyon would never again hide a secret. William Crane's ghost could finally rest, and the woman who had found his truth walked home. Months later, the Doyle Ranch had a new owner and a new quiet, the kind that meant safety, not secrets. Pulvera had his own paddock now, with deep grass and a shelter that opened to the south wind. Emily brushed out his mane every morning, and the scar from the rope had faded to a pale silver line. The heated stall was finished by fall, and on the doorpost a small bronze plaque caught the morning light. The horse who would not be killed. Emily had ordered it with William's date of death hidden on the reverse. She pressed her palm flat against Pulvera's neck, feeling the slow, steady drum of survival.
You walked out of that canyon and brought us all home.
The ranch hands tipped their hats to him now, and children from town came on Sundays to feed him apple slices. The plaque grew warm under the sun each afternoon, and nobody on that ranch spoke of Charles Doyle anymore. What they had was a horse that refused to die and a woman who'd learned that loyalty could be the sharpest form of justice. On a morning when the frost still held the cemetery grass, Emily left a handful of wildflowers on William Crane's gravestone. The stone was new, his name sharp in the granite, and beneath it, the date that matched the one inside the satchel.
You waited a long time for justice. I hope this is enough.
Back at the ranch, the county paper had run the story again. The front page, a photograph of Pulvera with the plaque. The headline read, "Horse exposes murder. Doyle convicted," and the article quoted Emily's words from the stand. 200 miles away, Charles Doyle sat on his bunk, the gray walls pressing in. He stared at nothing. No visitors, no letters, no one left to listen to his denials. At sunset, Pulvera broke into a gallop across the east pasture, his mane streaming, unburdened. Emily, standing at the fence, watched with a quiet smile, her eyes wet. The horse who would not be killed had outrun the wolves, the canyon, and the lies that tried to bury him. One final sunrise, Emily rode Pulvera bareback to the rim of Coyote Canyon. The junipers still stood, twisted and wind-scarred, but the rope was long gone. She pressed her forehead to his neck, and the world behind them, the trial, the cell, the grave, fell silent. Pulvera's eye was a dark mirror, and in it the whole canyon lay calm, unhunted and free. The wolves had never touched him, and the man who left him was now the one in a cage, back at the stable. The bronze plaque warmed in the low light, and someone had placed a fresh bunch of wildflowers beside it. The inscription said, "The horse who would not be killed." It had become a promise the land itself would keep. From that morning on, the canyon belonged not to a killer, but to the horse who remembered the way home. And when the sun rose, his eye still held it, untroubled, alive, unkillable, alive, unkillable. Morning sun caught the bronze plaque on the stall door. turning it to polished fire. A child, no older than 8, left a carrot on the stall ledge, teeth marks already worn into the wood. On a small shelf beside the plaque, a framed photograph of William Crane caught the same light. In it, William smiled, a wind-blown rancher with his hand on a horse that was not his own. Emily paused, touched the edge of the frame, and gave a single, slow nod. Inside the heated stall, Polvora lifted his head, ears pricked toward a sound only he could name. The plaque's words, "The horse who would not be killed," were no longer an epitaph. They were a covenant written in brass, witnessed by the valley and the mountains behind it. All that death had buried, a horse had unearthed, and no one would forget it. Outside, the sun climbed, and the Doyle Ranch, once a house of secrets, stood quiet under a clear, forgiving sky. 5 winters came and went, and Polvora's muzzle turned the color of old snow. He still roamed the east pasture, slower now, but his hoofbeats were still recognized by the land. Emily brushed his coat each morning, the plaque's words catching light on the stall door behind her. She'd grown older, too. The rescue she'd built in William's name hummed with second chances. Charles Doyle died in his cell, alone, 3 states away, his death unmarked by any service. When the letter came, Emily set it down, then walked to the stable and pressed her face into Polvora's mane. He nuzzled her shoulder, and for a long moment neither of them moved. A year later, on a still autumn morning, he lay down in the deep grass and did not get up, and Distry did not get up. In the stories told at Crane Acres, his eye still holds the sunrise, and his hoofbeats still race the wind. The horse who would not be killed. Bronze plaque on the stall door caught the final light of evening, as it had for years. Around it, the stable was quiet. No urgent hoofbeats, no voices, just the whisper of wind through the open door. The framed photograph of William Crane stood on the shelf beside it, his smile unchanged. No new crime disturbed the canyon. No secret lay buried in its sand. The juniper tree, where Polvora had been tied, stood older now, its bark scarred but its branches full. The rescue at Crane Acres had saved more than 24 horses, each one a second chance that would never have happened without Polvora's return. Emily no longer spoke of Charles, but she still dreamed of the morning the old gelding limped home. In the quiet of the stable, the plaque's words had become something like a prayer. Sometimes loyalty refuses to die, and the story of the horse who would not be killed became something the land remembered when all else was forgotten.